The Department of Labor's fiduciary rule has everyone in the industry talking. Well, I have the opportunity to talk to two experts here at Envestnet, Babu Sivadasan and Lincoln Ross. Gentlemen, welcome. This is a great opportunity to chat with you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Lincoln, talk to me a little bit about what the rule looks like in its final stage. I mean, a lot of people say it's a little watered down. What do you think?
So the final rule compared to the proposed rule has some reduced complexity. The proposed rule was, I use the word algorithmically intense, meaning that there were several calculations that would have been part of the best interest contract disclosure that would have required systems to calculate and be dynamically generating that information. Many of those calculations were removed from the final rule in the best interest contract exemption. However, the best interest contract exemption, while systematically less complicated, is expanded in scope in that it was expanded to include the transition from rollovers into fee-based programs. And what they introduced a new part of the BIC called a level fee fiduciary BIC, which has a lot of industry participants have called BIC for a day. So less complicated in terms of calculations, but potentially broader in scope in terms of the types of transactions and activity and type of recommendations that it covers.
Now, it's still confusing. It's still a little hairy to a lot of advisors. And we've seen here at the at Envestnet's Advisor Summit that advisors still have a lot of questions. We're sitting here in the shadows of the booth where this is happening, a lot of activity. But talk to me about some of the things Envestnet's doing to help its advisors.
Right. So a lot of things that we are doing, we are bringing insight. We are, some of the implementation of these rules that require a lot of data, and from that data you power insight, and using that insight provide the necessary tools to the advisor. So, for example, when you talk about a big contract being put together, you need expense ratios. You need underlying fundamental data. And that's very complex. If you look at the plan expenses, ultimately what the participant pays, it comes in various forms, right? Some of it is being paid by the plan, some of it is being paid directly by the sponsor, and then out of the expense ratio. So you got to rationalize all this, and we have built technology to kind of bring it all together, provide the necessary benchmarking capabilities to go with it. And I was a little bit disappointed when it was watered down because we were getting ready with more complicated, more sophisticated solutions, and we got to taper down that piece a little bit.
Now, Lincoln, as we travel the country, we've spoken to a lot of advisors about this rule and about some of their concerns. A lot of advisors have obviously been very wary about what may happen next. From your position, let's look at the best interest contract exemption. Is that the area that's drawn the most concern amongst advisors?
I think so.
Yeah.
The best interest contract, like I said, has an expanded scope, and what it does is it brings some additional operational burden to advisors and enterprises. The best interest contract requires that advisors maintain a record of that recommendation, and that recommendation is in compliance with the terms as the DOL has defined them. And so that creates additional onboarding workflows for the advisor, as well as additional record-keeping requirements.
Right. Now, this has also drawn concerns about litigation and potential litigation that could result from this rule. What's Envestnet doing to help advisors that are worried about potential litigation here?
Right. So there, what the DOL and any regulator is looking for is, are you following a process? Are you following a process that's well-defined, documented, and you can get to that anytime, right? And even an onboarding process, you want to make sure, we have systems in place, to onboard a client where all of these are systematically done. So you put together a proposal. That's your first step in pitching to a client, where some of what DOL is looking for is we have baked that into that proposal process. That's the best way. And once you create a proposal, along the life of that relationship, there are changes that happens to the financial situations, and we are able to capture all that. So we have this great fiduciary notes, that you can tag against each client, right? And at any point in time, you can go back and look at why did I make that decision for that client at that time, right? And that's great. And those are the kind of things, that DOL is looking for, right? Do you have a process? Do you follow that process rigorously? And if you do that, you're able to explain and defend what you're doing. Obviously, there are things around levelization of fees and things like that. There are certain guidelines, that is a change, right? And that, it's a change in business practice, that it is favoring. And a lot of advisors have been moving to that. If you look at the last 15 years, there has been that trend from moving from a commission-based business model to a fee-based business model. And we have been powering that to a large extent.
You guys really have done a great deal to empower that advisor to do that. But Lincoln, last question here, and I think this is really important. Does this drive advisors, at least physical advisors, away from smaller clients? And ultimately, does it create a new opportunity for robo or robo-esque kind of platforms?
So I think that an immediate reaction or knee-jerk reaction from advisors would be to stop serving smaller account balances. But that's really where they need to evaluate how technology can help them and scale those small accounts. I think they'd be underserving those smaller account sizes, and there's a lot of solutions that they can use to serve smaller accounts. We happen to be innovating and developing a number of different digital engagement capabilities that help advisors engage with smaller account balances and scale that and make it efficient for their practice.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thanks so much. Some really important information on where the DOL fiduciary rule is going. Thank you.
Great.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
For Investment News, I'm Matt Ackerman.